Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and welcome to our session entitled The Servant Leader's Search for Truth. The Q&A function is open, and we invite you to share your thoughts with one another throughout and after the presentation in the networking lounge. All lines are muted during the session. Please submit all questions using the question box, and note that we are recording this session. This session wouldn't be possible without the help of our generous sponsors. Our speaker is Joe Lonnie, President of Project Management Experts, which specializes in providing progressive project management, agile, leadership, and strategic and business management training. PME offers over 30 instructor-led courses and over 300 e-learning courses that can be taken on demand. His experience encompasses over 35 years managing projects, leading project management offices, conducting project management training, and improving project management processes. Mr. Lonnie has also conducted and published research in the areas of team member motivation, software implementation, and project planning. Please help me welcome Joe Lonnie.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time with your chapter. I do a lot of these presentations, mostly on the East Coast. I'm based out of a little west of Washington, D.C. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about a topic that's kind of personal for me, and hopefully it'll add tremendous value for you as well. Learning how the servant leaders, learning how to find truth and respect perspective as part of your job as a project manager. But before we get into it, with your permission, I'd like to take you back 40 years and share a little bit about my experiences. And yes, that's me. That was roughly 40 years ago, right before you can tell I was not a project manager when this picture was taken. Just look at that hair. Ever since then, it's been downhill when it comes to the hair on my head. But that said, about 40 years ago, when I came out of college, I started my career basically in selling computer equipment, computer and software. This was in the early 80s when we had personal computers and laptops didn't exist then. We had mini computers. And the first few years I was working selling computers, and I really wanted to get into consulting. So I was offered a job with one of the big 8. Back then, they were one of the big 8 accounting and consulting firms. And I remember getting the letter in the mail with the offer letter, and I remember looking at it thinking, my God, I can't believe I got this job. Are these people crazy? I'm not qualified to work for them. I was excited to get the job, but I'm like, oh my God, I just don't know how I'm going to fit in. Do I have the skills, right? So I started working, and I spent a couple of years working as a staff consultant, working on many projects, but all the time thinking that, that I really didn't have the skills and I wasn't as qualified. I was surrounded by all these intelligent young people that had master's degrees in IT, and I had a degree in management and marketing. And 2 years into it, I'm sitting at my cubicle doing work, and I hear a knock on my cubicle, and the senior partner was at the cubicle entrance, and he says, Joe, you got a second? I need to talk to you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they found me out. They found out that I'm a fraud. I don't belong here. I'm thinking to myself, is my resume updated? Oh, my resume is updated. And so he brings me to this office that was right across from my cubicle, and he closes the door. And I'm thinking, oh God, this is it. This is it. He's closing the door. When they close the door, you know you're in trouble. So I sat down, he extended his hand, he shook my hand, he said, Joe, I want to congratulate you. We're promoting you to project manager. And I went, I think my face must have turned white. I got flush, and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my God, are you serious?" And I literally told, "Are you serious?" And I even told him, "My God, I thought you were bringing me in here to fire me." And he laughed, and I laughed, and so no, I was promoted. So why do I share that story? Because we can make ourselves believe just about anything. And as a young person, I just didn't feel I fit in. I didn't have the, but it wasn't true at all. There were about 20 young consultants that were on the available and ready to be promoted, and they only could promote 5. And I later found out that I was in the top 2, right? I was a shoo-in, but I had no idea, and my self-understanding was totally different than they had seen me. So I want you to keep this in mind. As we go through this material, we can make ourselves believe just about anything. So what we're going to do is, what I want to do is to talk a little bit about servant leadership. I got to explain to you, if you don't know already, what it is and why it's important. Then I need to have a good discussion about what is truth, right? And how to, when we're in a conflict or when we have decisions to make as project managers, there's a process that we need to follow. And in understanding what is truth, respecting perception, and always squashing and eliminating lies and deception. Now, when we go through this might feel very political, and some of it is political, but it demonstrates really well the concepts that I'd like to get across today. So that's why we use it. And then we'll close it out with some tips on how we can all become better servant leaders. So let's start from scratch. What is servant leadership? Servant leadership has really been around since the 70s. Robert Greenleaf, who was a middle to higher level manager in AT&T at the time, he came up with this idea that there's got to be a better way to lead people. There's got to be a better way. And he basically felt, I'll let you read these definitions, but he basically felt that maybe leadership is much more than meeting the objective of the project. It's much more than just creating with a team a product that to be used by the customers. That maybe it was bigger than that. Maybe it was about people, that it was about how can I take vested interest in the people that I'm surrounded by and that are reporting to me. How can I help their career? How can I improve society? How can I improve the organization as a whole? And PMI, if you follow the various PMBOKs, over the last 3-4 years or so, they're moving in this direction, especially as it relates to working in an agile environment. And in an agile environment, as you all know, if you've taken the test recently, in an agile environment, the project manager / scrum master, their whole role is to support the team and not the other way around. So we take obstacles and impediments and blockers, we take that away from the team so that they can continue doing the work on the sprint. So servant leadership is much greater a concept than just how we serve the team in an agile environment. A good servant leader looks at organizations differently. We actually flip the org chart upside down, and it's our job to really support the team. So we're at the bottom of the org chart. And our job is to support the team members, right, that are actually doing the work, the supervisor, the team members. Our job is to support them as they do their job. What do we need to do to not only create the project's product, right, but also to create a good work environment, to enhance the careers of the people that are on our teams, right? To be sensitive to what we're producing that will be used in support of the customer's requirements, but also that'll support the society in a positive way in general. So we look at org charts like this. We look at org charts much more humbly. We're not at the top of the org chart. We're actually at the bottom of the org chart in our thinking. So we also use the term the iceberg of ignorance. And what is this? This basically means that project managers, executives especially, executives sit at the very top of the iceberg. Most executives are not in touch with all of the ins and outs and the details of the work that their teams are doing, quite frankly. And Sidney Yoshida developed this model, and he said that when you delve into the bowels of the organization, the lower level people, the worker bees, if you will, understand 100% of what the issues are in the organization, and the executives really understand only 4%. And that is distributed down. So as project managers, we're a little bit more in touch than the executives, right? But certainly the people that really understand what's going on are down here. Now, a servant leader embraces this. An autocratic leader is terrified of this. Why? Because they're not understanding everything that goes on. A servant leader says, I understand that I don't know. I know what I don't know, right? And so I'm going to rely on the people around me, and I'm going to support them to get the job done. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get them to do the things. I'll motivate them. I'll build morale, right? I'll rely on them to help me understand what I don't know, to help me understand how to support them and how to support the customer. So a servant leader is not terrified of this. An autocratic leader typically is. So let's keep going. I'm sorry, I got to click some buttons. This is servant leadership. If you like reading about this, I would recommend this book highly by Jim Sipe and Don Frick, The 7 Pillars of Servant Leadership. I'm going to summarize the book in one slide. Servant leadership works real well when you have a culture, you have executive level support, and a strategy that buys into the thinking that you're supporting the team, not mandating to the team. You're helping them do what they need to do to be effective. And so your focus as a servant leader is up in here as well. Your focus is up here. I want to make sure that the team is developing skills. The team, I'm going to return team members better than when I got them, that they're enhanced, their careers are enhanced. I want to meet the requirements of the stakeholders, my customer. And also, just as important, I want to respect the needs of the community as a whole, whether they be taxpayers. I want to minimize the amount I pollute the environment, for example. I want to send to the stakeholders and to the customers and to the taxpayers a product that enhances their life, doesn't take away from them. So you can see that can be a real challenge. So how do I do that? Well, let's start in the middle. In order to do that, I've got to be a good communicator, and I have to be a compassionate collaborator. I want to create a team environment where people aren't afraid to communicate the issues, the problems that they're having, so that I can work with them to get the job done. My thinking is I want to work with people and I want to do it with them, not to them. Okay, so I want to create a good environment that puts people first. I want to create an environment that has foresight. My job is to see, when I collaborate with all these people, do they and do I understand the impact of the choices that I'll be making? Can I predict the future? Can I see the future? If the customer is telling me to build this power plant and it's going to pollute the environment, I have to have the sense of moral authority and character to stand up and say, look, if we do this, here's what might happen. And is there a better way to construct this power plant in such a way where we minimize the impacts on the environment? We're not afraid to stand up and say that. So as a result, everything we do, we have to lead with moral authority. We're not afraid to say, wait a minute, this is not right. Wait a minute, this is not ethical. Okay? We have to be a systems thinker, meaning we see the big picture. Sometimes in project work, we're so focused on creating that widget, creating that product, that we don't see the bigger picture and the impact it will have on the stakeholders as a whole. So we want to be able to see that impact. We want to be able to, we respect processes. We respect policies and procedures in order to get the work done. So what is a good servant leader? This kind of summarizes what we just talked about. A servant leader isn't afraid of power. We want power. Power, the definition of power is the ability to influence. In this case, influence other. But we obtain power in order to improve how the organization is doing things. We want to influence, have a positive influence. It's not about us necessarily and about our personal gain, but it's about the organization as a whole. Now, let's keep that in perspective. It's not wrong to want to enhance your career. It's not wrong to want to move up the chain, okay? But we want to do it for the right reason. It's not just about you. It's also about how you can make a difference. A servant leader is not arrogant, but confident. Right? There's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. A servant leader is humble and truthful, regardless of the personal consequences to ourselves and those around us. We take accountability. We're not afraid to say, hey, we could have done this better. This is why in project management, and I've been teaching PMP prep now for over 15 years, and one of the things I've seen in project management is an enhanced understanding how important it is to remain accountable, to do retrospectives if you're in an agile environment, to look back and say, how can we do the next sprint better than we did this one? We're doing lessons learned, not at just the end of the project, but throughout the entire project, right? And we do that because we're not afraid as a team and individually to take responsibility for mistakes we made. It's all about getting better. We do not win at all costs. This is what I worry about in our society right now. We're willing to win at all costs, and we've got to get out of that attitude. We got to get out of the attitude that winning is more important than ethics and legalities. This is a big one, number 6. A good servant leader takes personal interest and pride in the success of those around them. Right? I have a young, inexperienced instructor. She has a lot of experience in project management and running PMOs. And she approached me. She was a client. And I provided training for her organization. And she approached me about 2 years ago and she says, Joe, look, I'm getting ready to resign from where I'm at now, but I really like to teach and I really want to share my knowledge. And I've seen her grow as an instructor and as a project and as somebody wanting to transfer their knowledge to other project managers. And it gives me a lot of satisfaction watching her grow and learn and become self-sufficient as she works to grow her own business. So we take pride in that. We're not so hyper-focused on managing a project to create the product, not caring about the people around us. So now we need to, any questions, feel free to jump in. If you have questions, there's a Q&A spot. I'm there also, your team is following along with me. I don't see anything, so I'm going to keep going. Now we need to have a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation. I want you to hang in there with me, because as project managers, we're thrown into all kinds of difficult situations. As a matter of fact, I feel that project management, from a leadership perspective, when you're in a middle management role like that, you have to be both a manager and a leader. A leader motivates, a leader builds morale, a leader sees the big picture. And as a project manager, we need to do that. But we also need to manage. We need to get work done through people, right? I hope you don't interpret any of this as snowflake stuff, because a good project manager knows when to kick people in the rear end because they're not getting the job done, and when we need to put our arms around them and coach and mentor. Good PMs float between both of those, which makes our job so challenging. Because if you're an executive in the organization, remember that 4%. You're dealing at the very higher ups of the organization, and you're mostly leading, mostly building morale, mostly strategically showing direction. But as a project manager, we're right in the muck with everything else, and we got to float between both of those. So let's define some terms. When we're running into conflict and we have to make decisions, we have to be in touch with what is the truth, okay? Truth, by definition, is the body of real things, events, and a key word there is facts. What are the facts of this conflict or of this situation? And it typically is undeniable. It's an absolute. It's black or it's white. It's it's truth or it's not. So first step is we understand where is the truth. And just like anything in life, that truth is subject to other people's opinions. Perception or ideology, if you will, this is my definition, gives personal meaning to truth. We all interpret facts on our own perspective. We see the facts and we interpret them differently. Each person has their own opinion on the impact of that truth. And as project managers, truth and ideology is fair game. We need to respect different opinions as we're working through an issue or a conflict or something about our projects. Now, deception is where we get into trouble. Deception is lies. It's an untruth. And we need to recognize that as well. So what I'd like to do a little case study. And I want you to work with me on this. We're going to do a little case study as it related to COVID. So I want you to put yourself back two years ago. And it's March 2020, and you're managing a very big project. You've got team members spread throughout the entire country. They're on site helping their customer as part of your project, right? And suddenly COVID hits. It's March 2020, COVID hits, and now you have a decision to make as the project manager. Now, of course, the reality is you'll get some help with others in the organization, but you have a decision to make. What are you going to do? Are you going to shut down your project and send everybody home to work at home? Maybe you'll shut down, maybe you'll keep them working. Maybe you'll ask them to wear masks. I don't know, but you have a situation. So what's the first step? The first step in this process is to identify the truth, right? So the truth in this situation is people are getting sick and many are dying, okay? That's the God honest truth. Now, it was more relevant as we moved through the summer and the fall of 2020. It was more relevant then, but people were getting sick. Now, notice that I want you to notice something in this discussion of truth. Nowhere in that statement do we even mention COVID, right? COVID became so political. It became so political that people there, everybody's heads were spinning. Okay, so I intentionally left the word COVID out of it because it was fact that people were getting sick and many were dying very quickly, right? I mean, I had a stepson that spent 2 weeks on a ventilator, right? We almost lost him. I had a brother-in-law that spent 2 weeks in a hospital. They didn't put him on a ventilator, but he came very close. Matter of fact, they asked him, do you want a ventilator? And we can put you, and when you go on a ventilator, they literally, they put you in a coma because your body can't sustain the ventilator. So they put you in a coma for 2 weeks and hopefully you come out of it so that you'll be able to breathe, right? He decided that, no, I'm going to wait a couple of days. Don't put me on a ventilator. And thank God he started getting better. So people were sick and people were dying. So you got to decide what you're going to do, right? So based upon that truth, you have to be open-minded to perspective. And if you remember, there are all kinds of things were floated at us in terms of dealing with COVID. You had both sides saying, one side saying, close businesses, everybody needs to stay in. When you have to go out, if you have to go to the grocery store, you got to wear a mask. We got to quarantine, right? The other side of the house was saying, no, keep businesses open. Don't take our freedoms. I can't afford, I run my business. This is the only way I support my family. You close the business, we were sunk. Make masks optional, right? Don't take away our freedoms. Make masks optionals. Don't quarantine. We can't lose our freedoms. Don't quarantine. We went through this. We've been through this before. We went through in the early 1900s, went through the Spanish flu and we lost a lot of people then too. We'll get through this as well. Okay. A good servant leader has to respect perception and ideology. We have to look at both sides of this. And I want to stress, we have to stop looking at one is right and one is wrong, right? We have to respect, as servant leaders, we have to respect the opinions of other people as we move to make a decision. The key word here is collaborate, communicate, right? Lead with moral authority. And we listen to those ideas, and then we make a decision. Now, here's where the trouble comes. The trouble comes when suddenly deception kicks in. Now, deceptions are lies, and we heard a lot of this. I don't need to tell you all the deceptions that were coming out of it. COVID is a hoax. It's not real. It was developed by so-and-so. It was developed by the Chinese to infect us. It was developed in a laboratory. It was all kinds of stuff was coming out. Vaccines are tracking people. I have a close family member who is not vaccinated, refuses to be vaccinated because she's absolutely convinced that if she gets vaccinated, the government now is tracking her and tracing her movements, right? So we've all heard this, and we have to recognize deception. There is no evidence of any of this happening. Same thing in your world. The deceptions will come in. We need to recognize them. We need to listen to perception. We need to listen to ideology. We need to keep an open mind. And when that deception comes in, boom, we shut it down, and we shut it down quickly. Okay? We search for evidence. So the question I've had from my family members, show me the evidence that it's being traced, that you're being tracked, or that I'm being tracked. And I know that she actually placed a magnet on my stepson's arm to see if it would stick to his arm. I mean, that's how crazy it got. Now, I hope none of you are out there believing this, but there's no evidence of it. And when the deception comes out, our first response needs to be, show me the evidence, show me the truth, show me how people are being tracked. All right. So it's a process to obtain truth, look for it, respect different points of view, and squash deception because of a lack of evidence. So, and I truly believe this, when we become too entrenched in our beliefs and our ideology, we become susceptible to deception. When we are so focused and we are not moving away from our opinion, or let me rephrase that, when we're not open-minded to considering other ways of thought, when we become so entrenched, it's a welcome for you could be introducing and buy into deception, okay, as a leader, because you're not going to move off of it. And I shouldn't say you, I want to use the term we, because we are all subject to this. But when we become too entrenched in ideology, we leave ourselves open to believe deceptions, anything to support our point of thinking. And when that occurs, we're sunk. And then it's those two things together that lead to what we are now calling in society conspiracy theories. We allow conspiracy theories to embrace us in order to support our ideology and our opinions and our perceptions. We could buy into just about anything. So the lessons learned is keep an open mind. I am not telling you to move away from your opinion. I am not telling you to not defend your opinion. Your opinion counts. What we think counts. It means something. All right? It means something, and we should defend it. But we shouldn't defend it so much to the point where we'll actually buy into deception. And when that occurs, we opened ourselves up to believe just about anything. And that's where the danger comes. And we want to stay away from that. Okay. How do we find truth? Now, this is the thing. Some of you are thinking, Joe, there's so much stuff out there. There is so much. And in my projects, sometimes I don't know which way is up and which way is down. How do I find truth? And again, I'm using modern day COVID and thinking and I hope you don't see this purely as politics, but it demonstrates really well what is going on now in our society and the things that you will have to deal with as in dealing with even simpler things on your projects. So how do we find truth and respect perspective? So let me give you some tips. Let's talk about these. First of all, I say become temporarily self-actualized. Now, what do I mean? Or find your peace point. If you know anything about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very top of the pyramid, there's self-actualization. Self-actualization means that I'm free. If I'm self-actualized, I'm free of prejudice. I'm free. I'm open-minded to other ways of thinking. I'm at perfect harmony with the universe, if you're a hippie, right? I'm at perfect harmony with the universe around me, and I'm open-minded. Now, Studies have shown most of us will never get to self-actualization in our lifetime. It's a real challenge to get to that point, right? So I say temporarily force yourself into being open-minded. I'm going to try to open my mind and think about other ways of thinking. I'm going to think although I don't agree with my colleague's opinion, let me keep an open mind. Let me put myself in his or her shoes. And let me try to keep an open mind to their opinion, right? And one of the ways you do it is you find your peace point. Now, I'll share with you what I do. Now, I'm a Christian and I'm a follower, and I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And when I put myself in temporarily, I will put myself in his hands and say, Lord, what would you do? What would you help me find the truth here? Not my opinion. Opinion is one thing, but help me find the truth. Let me get to the truth. Help me to respect people's differences of opinion. And I search for that quiet time, that private peace point. Now, for some of you, getting to there might be looking at the teachings of, Martin Luther King, looking at the teachings of Muhammad, or Moses, or whoever serves as your higher authority. You go to that point. Maybe it's a parent. My son called me just last night. He's having issues with his job, and he needs somebody to ground him in the issues that he's dealing with. Sometimes it's talking to a parent or a colleague or a mentor, anybody that will help ground you and help you find that truth. We also have to stop looking at perspectives as good or bad, right? I respect differences of opinion, but people that don't have my opinion are not necessarily bad, right? It's okay. We got to stop looking at and using terms like you're on the left or you're on the right or you're a liberal. Oh, you're just a conservative, right? We got to stop thinking that in terms of good or bad, right? What makes our project so productive is when we have different points of view. And if somebody doesn't share it with us, the first question you should ask is, help me understand your perspective and your logic, and help me understand how that's going to help us, right? Practice good emotional intelligence. That's being able to understand when you're angry, understand when you're frustrated, and as a project manager, as a leader, if you over respond with your anger, it's going to be picked up by your team very quickly and they might shut down. And then you're not going to get perspective from them. We might even open ourselves to be deceived, or they might open themselves. So we want to practice patience. One of the rules I've learned, if I get frustrated and I feel that my frustration is on a scale of 1 to 100, if it's anything over a 60, I call time out with myself. And I've done this many times. And I send emails, especially if you ever sent an email and you're responding to somebody who is challenging you or saying something to you that's not true, and your first response is, get that email out, I'm going to push back. And you write something up. More than once I've said, whoa, Joe, whoa, wait a minute. Let's not respond. Let's wait till the end of the day to respond to this email. And I will tell you, 9 out of 10 times I rewrite that email and I show a little bit more compassion, a little bit more understanding without giving up my perspective. Now we all, I don't care who you are, we've all found ourselves in deception, in supporting opinions that aren't real, or reporting truth that isn't real. It's natural. I don't judge anybody. When we find ourselves there, just come on back. Recognize it. Serve your team. Don't just manage them. And I really like this last point, and this may seem foreign to you. Success does not equal wealth. we tend to put wealthy people on a pedestal, and we use the term, wow, look how successful they are, right? I'm going to challenge you to redefine your definition of success. I've defined it for myself as the degree to which an organization and or a leader has a positive, healthy impact on their stakeholder community. It has nothing to do with wealth. Now, wealth may follow, right? I am not saying that wealthy people are not successful. I am not saying that. It's how you get there that's important. So wealth is a possible side effect. You might get promoted, right? You might find yourself moving up to a VP, even a CEO over your career. All right, it's how you get there. But in terms of your bank account, in the greater scheme of things, it's what impact did you have on the people around you? What impact did you have? Did you create great products that helped your customer? Did you build relationships? Did we encourage people to take on new opportunities, new challenges? Did we help their careers? That's what success is. It's not bank accounts, right? A lot of ways to get wealthy, right? And and I just don't connect anymore. Personally, I used to. When I started my career, I said, wow, look at that senior partner. That senior partner who just promoted me, at the time he was 35, right? He was making big money, good money anyway. And was he successful? He's a good guy. Matter of fact, he called me. He called me about 2 years ago. And he said, Joe, I'm looking for my next opportunity, right? How can you help me? Here was a guy who promoted me when I was just a lowly, consultant, and he was a partner, right? All things tend to come, what goes around, come around. And, now he's needing me to promote him, right? So I did. I connected him up with colleagues. He interviewed for a CEO position that I know somebody's able to hook him up to it. That's tremendously satisfying to me. And I hope it is to you as well. Okay, I want to wrap this up. Remember we said, when you find yourself in deception, come on back. I want to share a story. Some of you may remember, especially if you're my age, you might remember back in the Nixon days. He had an attorney. He had an attorney that was in one of his White House advisors, one of his White House attorneys. His name was Chuck Colson. And Chuck Colson fell into that category of all the president's men. If you read the book or saw the movie, Chuck Colson was an attorney, and he was willing to do some pretty dirty work in order to support the president. Specifically, you might remember there was a guy's name was Daniel Ellsberg, and Daniel Ellsberg had information from the Pentagon that basically said, hey, for a number of years, the Pentagon knew that the Vietnam War was a losing battle. They knew that they couldn't get out of this with a win. And he had evidence of it, and he was prepared to go public with it. And Chuck Colson was given the assignment to basically destroy this guy, Daniel Ellsberg. And matter of fact, he led the break-in to Ellsberg's psychiatrist. They found things about him, and they went public with it, right? And flash forward 5 years after Nixon left office, Colson spent about 7 months in prison. And while he was in prison, on the way to getting convicted, he actually decided to plead guilty. In the middle of his trial, he decided to plead guilty because he was realizing that he was heavily in bad stuff, doing bad things. There wasn't even a perception here. He was deceiving, he was breaking the law, he was ruining people, and he came to truth. And he realized that what I had done was wrong. Spent 7 months in prison and started prison fellowship in 1976. Totally moved out of politics and started this nonprofit that helped prisoners behind bars help them in their spiritual journey, help them find, Christmas presents while they were incarcerated. They found Christmas presents for their children, did some really positive things. My wife actually worked with Prison Fellowship, not as an employee, but helped them do some publishing in their newsletter. She's a magazine publisher. And she worked with Chuck Colson. So she knew Chuck Colson after he left prison. And this guy changed his life. This is a great book. And if you're not, don't worry. I know the title might lead you to believe, oh, it's a Christian holy roller. It's really not. There is talks about how he was born again, but it's a tremendous read. It's not a hard read. It's a tremendous read about how a guy moved from deception back into truth and found it again. And it's a wonderful read. And if you like this topic, I think it's a good read because he was really doing some deceptive things and he came back. And I've got a lot of respect for Chuck Colson. He died about 3 years ago. Matter of fact, Prison Fellowship is right down the street from where I live. And they continue to do some really good work today. So we all find ourselves there, right? It's not about being there. It's about getting back to where you need to be. So we always were welcome back. So with that, that's all I have. Good. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. This is a one-day course that talks about servant leadership in general. While you're writing your questions, let me just tell you quickly, we offer a one-day course in this area about servant leadership, about finding truth. It goes hand in hand with the communications course that we offer. We'd love to have you join in these two classes. We also offer the full line of instructor-led PMP Prep, ACP. We're doing a Discipline Agile course next week on the 25th and the 26th. And one of our instructors is one of the original people that was trained in Discipline Agile. So we're excited to be offering that course. Go to our website if you like. We've set up a discount code if you'd like to attend any of these classes. All of our classes, you're welcome to use that coupon code PMI South SW0810, and we'll give you 10% off of any class that we offer. And hopefully you'll join us. So there's our website. So let me throw it out to the group. Any questions I can answer for you? Any thoughts? Okay. Nothing?
So there is a question box if anybody would like to enter a question there. Just kind of a quick question for you, Joe.
Yeah.
So the Scrum Guide changed in 2020 from servant leader to true leaders that serve.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that change?
You said from the servant leader to true leaders that serve.
Yes.
Yeah, I think let me put it in my context, and hopefully I'll answer your question. What I've seen over the last 15 years, even before Agile came in, was there was mostly a top-down approach. You're the project manager, get work done through people. And then they softened it. Over the last 4 years, they've defined servant leadership as the role of the Agile project manager / Scrum Master. And as a servant leader, and they use the term servant leader, but they use it very tactically. What I mean by that, your job is to take the obstacles away from the Scrum team, take the issues away from them so they can continue sprinting and scrumming, and take them away, resolve them, and bring them back to the team. So as a servant leader, the way PMI has originally defined it, it's more tactical. It's more like I take this away, I fix it, and bring it back. I think now, in the latest PMBOK, they're opening it up, the definition, to be more about, it's a mindset. You're concerned not just about how you manage in an agile project, but you're concerned about your team. You're concerned about how you motivate. You're concerned about your code of conduct says collaborate. Your code of conduct says we don't want to do any harm to the environment. We have to bring it. It doesn't mean that you walk away from a project, but it does mean that you raise red flags when red flags need to be raised. And PMI is moving towards that approach that I've seen. I hope I answered your question as best I can. I see we have a question out there. I can't really read it though.
Yes, I can read that for you. The question's from Scott Harshman. He's asking, he says he appreciates the servant leadership concept and approach, but does not see much in his circles. What do you think would be a reasonable way to instigate the approach?
He doesn't see much in the circles. I'm not sure I understand that part, but let me take a stab at it. First of all, this works really well if you have just like anything else, just like starting a PMO. It works well when all the executives are buying into it. All the executives are saying, look, Joe or Scott, as a project manager, right, we want you to lead the team, but I'm concerned that you also coach and mentor the team members. It's not just about creating the project's product. You coach and mentor the team members. So you need to do this, you need buy-in. To do servant leadership, you need buy-in from the executives. If you're in an organization, I'm going to be frank with you, if you're in an organization that doesn't believe in this, it's all about what have you done for me lately? What product have you created? Is it on time? Is it on? If it's all about the triple constraints and no one cares necessarily about, you know, the goodwill of the standing of the team and the career advancement of the team members, you're going to have a real hard time implementing servant leadership because the organization is not going to support it like you would need. Now, that said, it doesn't mean you can't tiptoe into this. It doesn't mean on your little project, right, you can't put your arm around team members, you know, and say, look, tell me, you know, are you enjoying the work, right? Do you feel like, what do you think you want to learn that you're not learning? You know, what do you think? What experience, what technology do you think you need? It never hurts to do that, you know, on your little project. All right. And so you practice it within your project, not necessarily at the organizational level. So I hope I answered I think by your question, you're saying, okay, I get the bubbles, but servant leadership as a whole, you know, how do we implement it?
Yeah, it's a similar segue into April Van Os's question, where she says she has peers that don't have that servant leadership philosophy, and what strategies might you employ to still be successful with it?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple thoughts. Again, start it on your project, right? Don't make a big deal out of it. First of all, this is a mindset. This is an attitude, right? You don't have to wave your hands in the air to your executives. We're going to practice servant leadership. You know, this is just a good technique on dealing with people, right? This is just the way good guys and good gals should lead their teams, right? At least in my opinion. You don't want to wave your hand doing this because people won't understand it. But number one, but when you do it on your project, you might want to do something like at your next team meeting, like for example, if you ever have program reviews where every project manager, you know, steps up and talks about their projects and the issues and this and that, throw that into your presentation. Say things like, and I'm only if they're true, right? Say things like, you know, one of the things I engaged so-and-so, he was missing, you know, this type of technology in his resume, and we were able to embrace with him and get him to try something different, add a technology to his core competencies, and it really worked out well. And I'm excited that now this person is going back to the project pool, and he has this new experience and new background that'll make him more valuable to our organization as a whole. So when you do it, document the success and present it as much as possible to the higher ups. Like any executive, most executives, when they make changes, right, they need a case study. We even talk about this in PMP. They need a case study. They need somebody to prove to them that this has value to the organization. And how is it going to have value? So you're going to have to prove to them that you're practicing this servant leadership approach, right? And here's what you learned, and here's the value you're sending back to the organization as a whole.
Perfect. Well, we are right at time. So thank you, Joe, for sharing your expertise with us.
My
If
pleasure.
you are watching this session live, your PDUs will be recorded for you. Those watching the recordings post-event should refer to the instructions on your screen on how to self-report. Be sure to complete the post-conference feedback survey before the end of the day on October 28th if you would like the chapter to report your conference day PDUs for you. After that date, you would need to self-report. We will now take a break, and during this time, we encourage you to visit the generous sponsors in the interactive sponsor booths to learn more about their services and offerings. Our next sessions begin at 1:30. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Good luck. Have a nice rest of the symposium.